Alright, so I'm just a young stupid dog, and this is the 16th episode, which is the second episode of the second part of the Dog Wars. And this one was getting kind of really eerie and freaky deaky, and I don't know why. I mean, I don't get why the Dog Wars has to take all these yips and zounds and zigs and zags. But, I'm a little sad to report this was, big poor Dolores. She had to be taken out. I mean, from her own side. And the man was so heartbroken because he's the one who tasked big poor Dolores to take out over texting Sally. He had to step in and say, "Big poor Dolores, man, you're really freaking this whole thing up. You don't even, it's not supposed to be a torture fest." And I think I'm a young stupid dog. I don't know, but I think maybe Big Poor Dolores was torturing over texting Sally because Big Poor Dolores had a super hot, voluptuous, killer body, but it was from the neck down. From the neck up, she was a plain Jane, whereas over texting Sally was pretty all over. I don't even know if that's why I was, but the man had to step in finally and say, "Big Poor Dolores, shit, I'm going to have to kill over texting Sally myself." And the man was pissed deep down because he never killed a woman before, and because of, because Big Poor Dolores was like really sinisterly torturing over texting Sally. Over texting Sally had betrayed the man, and she had gone over to the other side, a la Benedict Arnold, and the man was set up by over texting Sally for this assassin. This assassin jumped out of the shadows and stabbed him right between his lungs. I mean, right between his ribs, but he punctured his left lung. The man was down to his last breath at one point, and the crazy thing, they were wrestling around, they were wrestling, and the man, all this assassin had to do was stab once or twice, right in the chest, right in the throat. It didn't matter. The guy could not pull the trigger. Somehow the man kept fending off. The guy had a little knife. He had this big, giant, half of a sword. He stabbed the man and went right between two of his ribs, punctured his left lung instantaneously. The man had like 26, 27 breaths left. He was counting them like, I'm fighting this guy. He's like 23 breaths. He's trying to hold his breath. 21 breaths. He's just counting down. You know what I'm saying? It got down to like 3 or 4 breaths, and finally the EMTs arrived, but he had already killed that guy by that point. I forget how he killed that assassin. All that assassin had to do was stab him, but the assassin never pulled the trigger. He had this little knife. The man grabbed the sword out of his, own ribs and started fighting the assassin with him. I forget how the man killed the assassin. He might have lopped his head off. He might have sawed his head off. The man, that assassin was screaming and hollering. I forget just exactly how. But the man was so pissed off because he was right down to his last 1 or 2 breaths, and finally the EMTs rescued him. They're like, "God bless, buddy, you have no pulse." He's like, "I'm down to my last breath over here." You know what I'm saying? Anyways, he was so pissed because he had to kill not only the assassin, but later on, he had tasked Big Poor Dolores to go find over texting Sally and take her out. But over texting Sally was making a mosh pit of it. She was making a mud pie of it. She was, torturing over texting Sally. And the man was like, you could torture her a little bit because, she betrayed us like Benedict Arnold over here. But anyways, the man, he had a soft spot in his heart for over texting Sally because she was so lovely. So finally, he had to step in. He had to kill over texting Sally. He dismissed Big Poor Dolores. He said, "Go on off." But then all of a sudden, the man was like, "I think I'm going to have to kill the second woman." He was so pissed off that he had to kill the first woman of his entire career. And, the man was an idiot. He lived in a world of a big manor house out in western Kentucky. He was an idiot, a savant, veterinarian. He had actually operated with little tiny instruments on a rabbit one time, and the rabbit began to talk somehow. He operated on a squirrel one time. He actually took a squirrel that had been crushed by a car, and he operated on the squirrel with those little tiny instruments, and he made the squirrel walk. The rabbit, and this is all in the first original I don't know if you'd call it a novelette that we'd done in the dog post about the man, the rabbit, and the dog. And that was back before I even learned how to talk. I didn't even know how to talk back in those days. I'm a idiotic, stupid dog, a talking dog. I didn't even talk back then. I was just a mute, idiotic, stupid dog. Then I became a talking, idiotic, stupid dog. It doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. Anyways, the man was kind of pissed off because he had to be the one to, to put overtexting Sally out of her misery, and he always held it against Big Poor Dolores. Then he got a little suspicious about Big Poor Dolores for a couple reasons. I'm not going to get into it here, but then he was like, Big Poor Dolores is going to have to go down. And he didn't really make his mind up that he wanted to kill Big Poor Dolores because he's like, I can't start killing women. You kill your first woman, all of a sudden it becomes easier to kill women. The man was like 58 before he killed his first woman. And the thing was, he was like an idiotic, stupid man. He was an idiot, savant veterinarian. He lived in a big manor house. He was known as being a dullard. He was known as being a house poor inheritor. But, every 15 or 20 years, I don't know if it was back when he was 27, 28, then maybe it was when he was 43, then it was when he was 57, he delves into the cornbread mafia whole thing that you got to get into sometimes if you're an elitist. Elitists always have to delve into evil, heinous crap. That's how they maintain their elitist status. Even if you're just a house poor, brain oxygen deprivation, brain injury survivor, idiot man, every few years, every few decades, you never know what's going to happen. Anyways, he fell back into this whole thing. No one even knows how this whole thing started up, but he was like a cornbread mafia aficionado. I don't even know how it happened, but he was like, I don't even know how I'm going to do it. Anyways, Big Poor Dolores started getting antsy. The man started getting antsy. If they just would have got together, maybe if they had sex, maybe if they didn't get into each other's business, maybe if they just forgot about one another. A lot of times what they do in Western Kentucky, they say, don't even bring it up. Don't let it drop. Why you got to bring it up? And the man's like, I got to clear the air. And they're like, don't clear the air. Just let it go. Drop it. Don't ever think about it again. Don't say it. That's the way you let things die. But the man was always like, you got to clear the air. You got to rip the Band-Aid off. You got to be strong, So, and I think over Big Poor Dolores was the same way. They never had a beef amongst themselves, the man and Big Poor Dolores. All of a sudden, they decide they have to kill each other. The man feels this thing whistle by his ear one night. He didn't know what it was. It turned out it was probably a bullet fired by Big Poor Dolores. It didn't have to happen that way, but all of a sudden, one day, the man, he was in the big parlor room. He wasn't in the big parlor room. He left the music playing in the big parlor room. He left a cigar smoldering in the ashtray in the big parlor room because that was a trick he did. Then he would go over into our chambers. Our chambers were off of the big parlor room. Our chambers were where the man was actually, spent the majority of his young adulthood because his parents were like, oh my God, we've got a brain injury, oxygen deprivation, brain injury survivor for his son. He's never going to become nothing. Little did they know he was an idiot savant veterinarian, And he also started that's how he got involved with the Cornbread Mafia. He started a pornographic graphic novel sold to just 19 and up business, and he sold sold to just 13 and under, a fireworks business, two businesses. That's how he got involved with the Cornbread Mafia. That's how this thing got started. But anyways, it doesn't matter. It was just sad because one day the man was almost convinced that Big Poor Dolores had taken a pot shot at him and tried to assassinate him. And she's like, it's not an assassination, it's an execution. That's what he later found out. She said it wasn't an assassination, it was an execution because he was guilty. He's like, what am I guilty of? She's like, you're going to try to kill me. He's like, I don't know. I was thinking about it, but now I know I'm going to kill you. Anyways, one day, he's sitting inside his chambers, our chambers at the manor house. He left a little glass of bourbon, the TV played, and a cigar smoldering. So if anybody came to assassinate him, they would think he must be out there someplace in the big parlor room, or maybe excuse himself to go to the bathroom. Little did they know he was sitting in the chambers, peeping out through the peephole. And anyways, there's a knock on the door, and he looks out through the peephole, and there's this very homely, robust, ugly woman. And he didn't think it was right. And he's like, what the hell is this? Who is this? You know what I'm saying? What is this? And he opens up the door and he realizes At best it's a transvestite, but it's like this big burly dude dressed in drag, a big square chinned Swede with this, piss poor dress, a cheap dress, and a stupid wig. And he's like, oh my God. And he pops this guy right in his face. He busted the guy's nose. He knew right away something was up, so he pops this guy. This guy takes one step back. He tears off his wig. Turns out this guy looked like Claude Van Damme. You know what I'm saying? Claude Van Damme. He was this big, burly Swede. He starts busting down the door. The man tries to slam the door shut. The man is hooping and hollering for me. I'm a stupid dog. I don't have the ambidextrous, I got paws. Just because I'm a talking dog doesn't mean he's like, get the gun, get the shotgun. I got the shotgun. I brought it over to him in my mouth, and then I went and hid under the bed. It was the best thing I ever did. I'm a cowardly dog. I brought him the shotgun. It's this little 20 gauge. He's like, I need the shells, dog. I was already cowering under the bed. He's screaming and hollering. This giant transvestite Swede is busting through the door, and somehow the man, he's fending this guy off, and the guy busts through. The man kind of like hip checks him. He comes to the door of our chambers. I'm hiding under the bed. The man has the shotgun. He takes the shotgun. It's like a little 20 gauge shotgun, and he blasts this guy right across his head. He knocks him unconscious. And then he takes the shotgun and he just proceeds to beat the brains out of this guy's head. This guy was an assassin that Big Poor Dolores had hired. And right then and there, the man's like, holy shit, I can't believe I just had to go through this. I can't believe they would come into my house, you know what I'm saying, and do this kind of bullshit. But he's like, Big Poor Dolores, you are as good as dead. Big Poor Dolores. It began on this thing where they were both a little bit, whatever you say, suspicious of each other. That's the whole nature of the dog wars. Friends betray friends when it comes down to it. It starts out with enemies versus enemies. All of a sudden, before you know what's going on, it's friends versus friends. But Big Poor Dolores, it's the second time it started out with the Fantastic 14. There was these beautiful 7 women, of which, Big Poor Dolores was one, Overtexting Sally was one, but they identified them all because they had big, beautiful, perfect boobs. So they were known as the Fantastic 14. Then they dropped down to the sultry 6, counting the boobs, 6 sets of boobs, 6 women and like the 12. I don't even know what it was for the 12. It was I don't know if it was the sultry 7 when it was the Fantastic 14. Then when Overtexting Sally had to become killed, then it became the sultry 6 or the sultry, I don't know what it was. I don't even know. But after Overtexting Sally got killed, I think it was called the sultry 6, but I forget the 12, something about, they had 12 sets of boobs, 12 individual boobs, 6 sets of boobs, I don't even know. But then, in this chapter, it's not a chapter, it's an episode. It's the second episode of the part 2 of the Dog Wars. It ran through, I think, episodes 1 through 13 was the first part of the Dog Wars. The second part of the Dog Wars opened up with this very successful 11,000 viewed, 1,000 subscriber thing where we did, I guess it was episode 14, I believe, was the first episode of the second part of the Dog Wars. Then we put on, I don't even know what it was. It was the second episode of part 2. It got like 15 views and no subscribers. And it was really good about the way the man had to, he was very merciful. He was a merciful cornbread mafioso. Plus, it's like, if he survives 4 or 5 years into it, he's going to drop out of the whole thing. He's going to go back to being, a run-of-the-mill, nobody knows about him, house poor inheritor in Western Kentucky. But right now, he's, neck deep in the Dog Wars, and he's contemplating how he's going to kill his second woman. He's really pissed off. He didn't want to have to kill the first woman. He never killed a woman in his life. 57, 58 years old, he's killing his first woman, but he had to kill her for merciful reasons. It was a mercy killing because Big Poor Dolores was torturing Overtexting Sally in a really nasty way. But anyways, then all of a sudden, he survives his second assassination attempt, and it was like his third. I think he thought that Big Poor Dolores must have took a pot shot at him after he was walking down a crisp, beautiful evening, walking down the thoroughfare out there in western Kentucky near his manor house. He heard a bullet whistle by his head. He scampered off, and he was like, God bless, you know what I'm saying? He knew right away it was Big Poor Dolores. And then all of a sudden, a day or two later, here comes this Norwegian assassin dressed in drag that he's got to beat the brains out of. He ruined his 20-gauge shotgun. He loved that 20-gauge shotgun. He had it since he was a little kid. They used to shoot doves down on the plains, down on the cornfields near the river. I don't know what river there is out there in western Kentucky. Maybe they were shooting some squirrels along the trails, or maybe they were, I don't know what they were doing. Maybe they were just, I don't know, skirting around the quarry. Maybe they were down there around the quarry. But he's like, God bless. Now I got to figure out a way to go kill Big Poor Dolores, and even know where Big Poor Dolores was. I don't know. I think this is the third episode in the second part of the Dog Wars, because the first one was, I don't even know what it was. I forget. Then the second one was how the man was very merciful to the point where he, when he hung out with different individuals, he would try to put their feelings first, their needs first. Even when it came to sexual things, he would put them first, and he was always good. He was always trying to be good. This third episode, he survives a pot shot from Big Poor Dolores. Then he survives an assassination attempt. They got right inside the manor house, and they almost burst into our own personal chambers. He has to beat the brains out of this, transvestite-esque, dressed in drag Norwegian. Looks like, I forget what they was. His big giant guy looks like Paul Bunyan's cousin. He looked like Paul Bunyan's troglodytic Norwegian cousin. Anyways, he said, God bless, now I have to earmark Big Poor Dolores for death. And he was trying to figure out what's the best way. He didn't even know where Big Poor Dolores was. Little did everybody know Big Poor Dolores was like Amstrang. She went on the lam. She disappeared. You know what I'm saying? You didn't know where she ran into the thicket, like where a rabbit wouldn't go. I don't know what's going on. I'm a stupid dog. All I know is these Dog Wars are, at first they were just all about violence and, having to deal with what you got to do when you got to do it. Now they're more delving into intrigue and like a soap opera. I'm a young stupid dog, and these Dog Wars are kind of turning into a freaking soap opera. I don't know. Don't worry about it.